What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Blazers Edge podcast. This week, we're joined by another replacement co-host as we sort through the process of replacing, which you can never quite replace, the fantastic Team Mom Terrible and Bigs, TBB, as my co-host likes to call her. You will recognize him from, I don't know, the other show that we do, Blazers Outsiders. Joe Simons. What's going on, buddy?
Hi, everybody. Dan, thanks for having me. It's great. It's great to see your face. I'm excited to talk to you about Blazers-related things. Certainly a welcome distraction from what's been going on in the world. Not that we shouldn't be focused with what's going on. Obviously, it's very important, but we just wanted to acknowledge up front that we know what's going on. Stand in solidarity with those getting their voices out there. I don't want to speak for you, but I'll speak for myself.
No, you and I are on the same page on this.
Yeah. So we support what's going on out there as far as protesting, police brutality. And we just want to acknowledge that right out of the gate. Make sure we mention it.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we don't want to be tone deaf. It's basically all I've been doing the last 3 days is scrolling through my phone, looking at things, retweeting people who are much smarter than me, listening, keeping quiet.
That's the big thing.
Where I can.
Listening. That's
yeah.
I've said almost nothing on social media about it. I just either like or retweet and elevate what I can, and it's not that I'm sitting here wanting to stay silent or not take a side. It's just that my voice doesn't need to be heard right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought a lot about it, which is, I suppose, the point. And I see a lot of people saying, don't be silent, don't be silent. And I am not being silent. Like you said, I'm trying to retweet and elevate other people's words and get my opinions out there in solidarity with people. I'm trying to show support. And look, I'm a white guy who lives in Portland. So it's not a diverse place. No. And that's just a fact. And I don't know. A lot of thoughts going through my head. It's not about me, so I don't want to focus on myself. It's about the movement and what's happening out there. So I want to keep the focus there and just say that I'm thinking about you. I support all of you, and I love all of you, and support Black people.
Absolutely. It's as simple as that. And just want to say real quick, prayers go out to you. I don't care if you're a man or woman or otherwise of faith or not of faith. It's still be safe. Take care of you and yours, and when you can help somebody out, please do. That's the same thing I'll always say. And we've seen plenty of players around the league who have taken a stand, who have made their voices heard. We've seen Malcolm Brogdon, we've seen Jaylen Brown, we've seen Karl Anthony Towns, who showed up in Minnesota, which was incredible considering his family circumstances surrounding COVID-19. Obviously, here in Portland, there hasn't exactly been a quiet voice here in Damian Lillard. So it's good to see this kind of go the way it's going, in a sense, is that it's not being ignored anymore. Hopefully that continues. That's kind of where I'll get to it at. I don't want to just drop it, but also this is kind of the whole point of this week is kind of to be a respite from everything else, to give everybody a little bit of a break, to decompress. And like you said, the ability to get away from your phone, to get away from social media, to kind of just take a break and focus on something else for 45 minutes. And it's not to distract but it's just to give you a break and focus on something else that you love and you want to enjoy, and it's coming back. And we're not shying away from it. That's why we wanted to address it in the beginning of the show. But with that said, the NBA is coming back, Joe. It's been a little while since you and I have been able to have mics in front of us and talk about this.
Let's talk some hoops, Dan.
So what has been your overarching thought theme as far as what the league is doing, what you want them to do, how you think this will ultimately end up?
I like the playbook that Gary Bettman laid out. As soon as I saw what the NHL did, I wish the NBA would jump on that. And considering a lot of the rhetoric from kind of those top 10 players who seem to have the most influence over the players union, which will ultimately dictate what happens, Dame being a part of that group. It seems like the prevailing narrative is they want some regular season games. Shake the rust off. Don't want any team to have an advantage. You know, if you have teams that are lower down that get hot and get on a run, let's say the Spurs, it's not going to happen, get hot and all of a sudden make a run, and they're playing a lot of games in a build-up to a series with a top seed like the Lakers. Perhaps the Spurs have an advantage over the Lakers, and they're trying to squash that. So to get back to the NHL thing, what they were doing is top 4 seeds in both conferences, they move on to the semifinals or quarterfinals, whatever the second round of the playoffs would be. And then 5 would play 12, 6 would play 11, 7 would play 10, 8 would play 9. And you get that sort of preliminary, okay, we need to decide these final seeds. Then we get into the quote-unquote real playoffs. I like that idea a lot. I like the idea of getting right into a postseason, ending the regular season. But that seems pretty unlikely. That doesn't really seem like a possibility given what I've seen over the past 4 or 5 days. So that being said, giving the teams an opportunity to warm up seems like we're going to have a regular season and then a postseason, because I don't think there's any chance we reduce the number of games in the postseason, at least based on what I've heard so far.
No. The wild thing is, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about 6 or 10 regular season games. And then those regular season games just went poof out of nowhere. Like, nope, straight to the playoffs. We'll do something different, like a round robin or a play-in tournament. But now all of a sudden we're back to 8 regular season games. Like, how that ping pong ball has gone back and forth has been pretty weird. And this may sound a little bit weird, but I'm kind of disappointed in Adam Silver in that him and really the league has leaked everything. And they haven't led at any point in this. They haven't said, this is what we want to do, or this is how we're going to do it. They're probably 3 weeks behind what they should be as far as making a decision. And they've said it so many times, and they've said, or they've de facto said, this is what we want to do. And then they get feedback, and then they get getting, not that feedback's a bad thing, but at some point in time, you have to put your foot down and be like, no, this is what we're going to do. The NHL just said, no, this is what we're going to do. Major League Baseball is doing, I don't even know. That's a nightmare. The NFL is like, we're the NFL. We're going to do whatever the hell we want to do. So we're going to have fans. What are you going to do about that? We're going to play on time. Like, they're just big swinging in the room. But the NBA has just been like, I don't know. Like, at some point in time, a decision has to be made. Now, they're saying that's going to happen this Thursday, and that the one thing that we have gotten out of this is that July 31st is going to be the resume date. That seems to be the one singular thing that we kind of know at this point in time. But, I mean, that feels kind of late, doesn't it?
I suppose it does. I'd like to see, okay, if July 31st is the start date, what's the start date of the next season? And what's everything in between? Because I'd be very surprised if they put it on a July 31st start date and they have an NBA final start date for the end of this season, but they don't have something set up for next season. Because to me, that's almost the most important part, right? Begin of regular season, however many games that's going to be. Begin of playoffs, begin of NBA finals, then draft free agency, kind of whatever order that's going to be. I've heard they may flip-flop that. And then getting into training camp and then next season. Because if you're at a point where you're starting the next NBA season in 2021, I think then perhaps you're getting into, okay, well then when's the finals next year? And then, because don't you think it kind of sets up to dictate the schedule of seasons going forward?
100%. I've been of the mind ever since the season stopped that if they were going to resume play, this would be the time when things would change, when the NBA would move to a Christmas or around Christmas start date.
Fabulous. Who's not in favor of that, by the way? I mean, isn't that what we all want to have?
I think we do. And then there's the whole idea of, do you want real basketball, the playoff basketball, the end of season basketball to be being played in late May, June, July, kind of taken away from some of the summer? That's always kind of been the hesitation there. Like, what will that do to, and I'm talking from a corporate standpoint, what will that do to ratings? Will people be willing to stay inside during their summers to watch the NBA? And I think that's a legitimate question.
It is a legitimate question. I think the answer is yes. It's just something that we're not used to. Selfishly, I'm worried about it affecting pickle season, but that's my own stuff. I can deal with that.
And golf.
And Don't even get me started on the golf, Danny.
What time's your tea time today, Joe?
Yeah, it's at. I got 2 hours, so we gotta keep this quick. Well, it was funny because I was actually joking with Chad Dewing about, because the Blazers looked like, maybe they're not going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Our golf season's going to start a lot sooner because last year golf season got delayed.
It got pushed back.
The Western Conference Finals. Something I wanted to ask you about a point you made earlier. What do you think is the reason for the NBA dragging their feet? Do you think it is because every GM is proposing a solution that best fits their organization, or is it because certain GMs have certain influence that others do not, and those are the loudest voices in the room, or is it owners putting pressure on their GMs to say a certain thing? It just feels like there's a lot of voices, but everyone is going to ultimately push for what they want the most.
Everybody's going to talk about having a mutual agenda, right? Of like, oh, it's what's best for the league. No, it's always about self-interest. And that's not just the billionaires. That's literally every level of life. You're always going to have your own vested self-interest, your own biases. It's just how much of it and how loud are you and how effective you are. Here's the difference. Adam Silver, I like him. I like what he's done for the most part. But one thing Adam Silver has never been is a iron fist. He is not a guy who – I don't think he's a – honestly, I think he's a fantastic number two. I think that in that role, but when it comes to absolute unequivocation of decision-making, David Stern will reign supreme there forever.
But don't you think it's the sort of thing where it's like the old sports adage? When you have a player-friendly coach who doesn't work out, you bring in someone with an iron fist. And it's the same with the commissioner. Mm-hmm. What was David Stern? He was the iron fist guy. I'm in charge. Listen.
But he brought in Adam Silver to kind of balance himself out.
And he was the heir apparent for a long time before he eventually took over. And, that just shows David Stern's influence. Now, you would know this a lot better than I, and perhaps it's not a thing, but is there a person who is sort of the number two, maybe a little farther down the pecking order, who has a public profile, kind of like Adam Silver did? I know Adam Silver is he's been the commissioner six years now at this point?
Maybe 6, 7. Yeah. It's been enough time to where he's established who he is and how he operates.
Right, but there's not someone in the NBA office, to your knowledge, who is balancing him out in this way.
I mean, there have been guys in the past, like the Stu Jacksons, who are and then you've got a guy like Kiki Vandeweghe, who has been in charge of player conduct, who not necessarily a hard ass, but has been very blunt and forward with how they've handled things. But I haven't seen a Stern type operating in the NBA office or heard of that as far as that counterbalance. So that's where, I hate to say it because it kind of hurts. This is where somebody who had been an owner for basically ever and was the voice of the owners, Paul Allen, would be very valuable as far as, being that continuation between the two commissioners and having all the experience and being one of the longest tenured owners in the league and obviously one of the richest. Having that, I think, matters. And I mean, you look around the league, there's a lot of new owners, and I don't know how much they do or don't have the vested interest in the league as opposed to the vested interest of the valuation of their franchise, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was always my take whenever I saw Woj or Shams put out a tweet that said, okay, well, these people are going to discuss this thing. And it's like, well, the Hawks GM is going to do what's best for the Hawks, and the Knicks are going to do what's best for the Knicks. And the Thunder's going to do what's best for the Thunder. Well, the Knicks are going to do what's best for James Dolan.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was like, I don't know if the Knicks are going to do what's best.
Bad example.
Because that hasn't happened in 20 years.
So do you think we're actually going to get an answer on Thursday? It feels like they've said this is the date we're actually going to tell you guys what's going on.
No, that was the thing. Is I think that the message got out there that they needed to say something because it hasn't been official. Like there was we heard from Shams that that thumbs up, thumbs down text message went out, and then that got out. A couple people like, oh no, that didn't happen. It's like, guys, we already had like 14 people confirm that it did.
And what are we trying to protect by disputing that either? It doesn't make any sense.
You're doing the same thing that literally every union everywhere does. It's a quick straw poll of like, hey, how do we feel about this? Do we need to address this, or can we just move on? But they didn't like the fact that the wording wasn't professionally written by somebody at legal. And it's like, guys, it's okay. Like, those are the kind of things that should be happening. You should be gathering that information because it got out there. Now you're backpedaling on it. It's like, but that's I think that kind of what set the precedent of like, guys, what are you doing? stop getting this leaked to the media. Like, plug your leaks. Know who you're talking to. Speak. Don't email all. Like, owners only. Like, check your email distro lists. What are we doing here? Stop including the assistant PR guy. Okay, like that's how this stuff gets out. Like, stop doing that. So they need to have a foot needs to come down. That's what needs to happen. Now, will we hear between now and Thursday 18 different things? Unabashedly, yes. We are going to hear that. There's two things that I think that we know for certain right now, or as near to certain as possible. July 31st will be the start date, and there will be at least 20 teams. It's Zion and Dame. You have two of the most marketable players in the entire league on the outside looking in right now. Let's just call it what it is. And guess what else they are? They're small markets. So this is the NBA tossing the proverbial bone, saying, "All right, small markets, here you go." And they're getting their money's worth out of it and getting Dame and Zion in the playoffs.
Yeah,
this is definitely a quid pro quo for both sides.
So, I mean, it's going to be silly to sit here and speculate what we think the league is going to do. They're going to find out on Thursday. But do you think there's any chance that they just cap it at 16 and say, "Let's go"?
No. The wording and the messaging from players like Dame, where everybody saw it, and from what I've heard has happened quietly, is that those two teams are getting in. The Pelicans and the Blazers are getting in. And I haven't heard anything otherwise for the past. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, good. The small market team wins out for once. Suck it, LA. Like, I don't care. If the Lakers come out of this and they stumble and fall on their face against somebody, I'll love the hell out of it. And then they can whine, cry, and scream and all that stuff, and we'll move on because I won't care.
I just loved what Dame did with Chris Haynes. The
leverage play?
It was so smart because for him to frame it the way that he did meant that to speak out against Dame means that you're questioning his desire, his leadership, and him wanting to keep himself safe.
Yep.
Exactly right.
Oh, anybody who didn't read between the lines there, guys, Damian Lillard is maybe the most media-savvy guy in the entire league. He doesn't just say stuff. He has never just said stuff. Like, every one of his post-game interviews is honest, succinct, and conveys a point. When he talks about, he never throws anybody under the bus, but he will always find a way to get a little bit of a message through. Always. And you and I we've covered how many games together now? 200?
Hundreds, yeah.
And what do we always talk about? Who is the best guy in that well, Myers was that guy with Dame, but it's Dame and then it's nobody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's been such a treat just to listen to Dame for as long as he's been here and to continue to sort of ascend to this leadership level that, look, I'm only 34, 35. I'm not going to pretend like I remember how Clyde was in the locker room, but Dame does it a different way. And I think it was the Wild one who put it out on Twitter and basically saying, this is why Dame is the greatest Blazer of all time. Because for him to come out and make a statement like this gets movement from the NBA, and you wouldn't have seen other players who we consider to be in that conversation make that sort of statement that would also have the leverage to actually get action
to actually matter. The only other player that the Blazers have ever had who had that kind of cachet was Clyde. And he wasn't a guy who talked.
No.
And when we talk about the cultural impact of Dame, we're not just talking about the lovey, feel good, makes everybody come together stuff. We're talking about how he impacts things on a league level. That matters. And I think, honestly, you need to give CJ McCollum some credit there, too, as a voice for the NBPA. He has been on that kind of level for a while as far as making things happen. But Dame has more cachet. So, and this isn't the first time he's put it on the line. But, we're going to touch on this a little bit because it's funny. Dan Orlovsky, who genuinely is, as an NFL guy, is good.
And that's what was so surprising about it. I think he's actually quite good on Twitter. I'm like, oh no, what are you doing, dude?
He went with the drive-by entitled brat, and Oh my God.
Especially when he did it, to not recognize what's going on in the United States of America. All you do is open your eyes and see what's happening. And to make that statement about a black man, what are you doing? What an idiot.
I mean, and the thing is, like, if he wanted to say that about an NFL player that he's well versed on and all that kind of stuff, and maybe it is right, maybe it's a diva type player who's just, let's throw a name out there, I don't know, Antonio Brown. Not that my Raiders ties are frustrated at all.
I was going to say Aaron Rodgers. I don't want to offend you.
Hey, come on now, Aaron's my guy. But that would have been like, okay, it's whatever. You know, the NFL folks would have had their say, but like to come out and say that about Damian Lillard.
Yeah, is Dan Orlovsky staying up to watch Blazer games? Give me a break, dude.
Or literally read a single thing about Damian Lillard off the court.
I love that even despite what's going on, one little statement like that, and Blazers Twitter it was
the Elmo on fire, just burn it all to the ground. Normally, I don't get involved with that stuff. I just kind of sit back and like, but I'm like, you win it, Dame, with that?
Yeah.
Like, if you want to talk about how you don't like his album or something like that, like a tired take like that, but entitled, spoiled brat of Damian Lillard, who gives back at like literally every opportunity, who you have to basically give the stage hook to yank him off the floor, and who didn't say he wasn't going to go to Florida. He just said he's not going to play in basically what amounts to exhibition games, which how many NFL players play every preseason game who's a star? Do they play one or two?
When the Lakers were out of playoff contention, was LeBron playing game 80, 81, 82? No, he was sitting on the bench. Why is it any different? And guess what? There wasn't a worldwide pandemic happening when LeBron was doing that. His team was just garbage.
Yeah, it's just I don't want to give this one thing too much time, but it was just like,
I know.
What are we doing here?
It was just such lazy garbage.
It was drive-by. You want to talk about the whole, God, I hate even saying it out, the whole fake news media twist and drive-by media that everybody, or clickbait that everybody just says is so pervasive. This was a literal example of it that we don't usually get. Like, it was like Skip Bayless has bad takes that he portrays as good TV, but I don't see it go personal all that often. And for a guy like Orlovsky, who again is good on TV and usually really good on Twitter, to not talk about the game or the impact of that, but to go personal, that crossed a lot of different boundaries for me.
Yeah, it's how he said it. And even if you're going to come out and criticize Dame for not wanting to play in those games, or, you know, keeping it from a pure basketball perspective,
mm-hmm.
to attack his character in that way was just so ignorant. That's the best word for it. It was a totally ignorant thing to do. It's lazy. The lazy and entitled person in this whole conversation is Dan Orlovsky.
Yeah.
And it sucks that it happened. He got buried for it, rightfully so.
He did be like, you know what? I screwed this up. He didn't delete the tweet. He left it up there, which, again, I know people are like, oh, so what? He still needs to get – listen, you want to dunk on him? That's fine. But at least he was like, you know what? That was pretty dumb. That was on me. That's my bad, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, and, you know –
Dame doesn't have to accept it, but –
no, you don't. I mean, good for him for saying it, keeping it up there and taking the flack.
Taking the dunk.
Yeah, but – you know, it's still dumb. It doesn't mean it wasn't a dumb statement to begin with, I guess, is my final take on it.
All right, so we're walking back to some of the questions we had that I put out there. This is from Jeremy Kreklow at Strife. What are your thoughts on the 20-team World Cup-style group stage format with each team only playing 8 games? I personally love it. It minimizes risk as much as possible. Every game will feel important. Then after the group stage, going down to 8 teams feels like the safest route. What are your thoughts, Joe?
So how many teams are we starting with in that scenario?
I believe it's 20. Yes.
Okay.
That's the 20. So that's the 16 plus the 4 Western Conference teams. So that's Portland, New Orleans, San Antonio, Sacramento.
Yeah. I think that's fun. I don't want to do okay, let's bring everyone back and we're going to start with the records the way they are and we give teams a chance to climb back into the playoff structure. Like, this is an opportunity to experiment and do weird stuff like this. And you know I don't like it. I know you're a much bigger fan of it than I am. But it seems like this would be really the only opportunity they would have to practically try to recreate and put out there the in-season tournament that they've talked about, which I think is really dumb. But if they're going to do it, if you're going to
they're going to do it.
But here's the thing. I guess what doesn't make any sense to me is if you're going to do an in-season tournament and say the model of it is for what we did for this postseason, then are you still awarding the NBA championship for this tournament, but you're not going to award the NBA championship for this tournament in the midseason next year? Like, it gets into this weird gray area of what are we actually trying to settle here? Are we trying to settle the 2019-2020 season? Because if we're doing that through a tournament, the team who wins that tournament gets the NBA championship trophy. They're the NBA champion. So what does the winner of the team get for the in-season tournament the following year if you're also going to have, obviously, the playoffs and the finals to conclude the 2020 and 2021 season? I guess that's where my brain starts to melt a little bit, because I don't really know what we're awarding here if we're doing the tournament that's also going to be the NBA finals in a sense.
So I get what you're saying. I'm not necessarily in favor of the World Cup style tournament fully for deciding this title. I think a round robin style group stage tournament to start things off makes sense. And then you go into 7-7. Like, that is what makes the most sense to me. But tell me it wouldn't be fun as hell to see, I don't know, Houston get knocked out immediately. I mean, not that I would care in one way, shape, manner, or form. But
as NBA fans, we love to complain about stuff. We're all going to complain about the group we're in. It's going to be fantastic.
Here's the thing. Here I talked about, the season shouldn't matter. Da, da, da. And I'm like, what, the season, like, by the time we start, that was 120 days ago?
Yeah.
Like, I get it, but this is different. So why not get a little spicy? Why not do something different? And I was saying this to you in January, February, before the pandemic. Like, if they're going to do something spicy, like, they should just do it now.
If they're not going to do it now, it's never going to happen.
It's never going to happen. Ever.
Never going to happen.
No. And there's like, I just think that you talk about, well, will anybody be interested in watching that? We watched 16 seeds in an NCAA tournament who you couldn't tell me where they are unless the location is in their school name. Joe, how many people do you think could tell me where Iona is?
That's in New York, isn't it?
Yes. But how many people do you think could genuinely do that, filling out a bracket?
I mean,
10%?
Yeah, less. I got lucky, folks. I don't know.
And the only reason you knew that was because Iona was in the news because of Rick Pitino. That's the only reason.
Why.
That is literally the only reason you knew that.
You're right. I was wondering how I knew that.
But again, think about how much interest that gets.
That'd be fun.
And now you're going to do that with LeBron James or Giannis? Are you kidding?
Yeah. It'd be great. It'd be great. I mean, I guess Blazer fans, it's just, we have this opportunity. We have like 6 weeks, right, where we're going to sit there and say, we're getting Nurk back. We're getting Zach back. And that's really been the whole mode of Blazer fans all season was, well, just wait till we get Nurk back. And now it's actually going to happen, and there's going to be a format that the Blazers are going to be involved in. Yeah, it's incredible. I'm excited. Anything that happens, I'm excited. But I guess to your point, spice it up a little bit. If you're going to do it, the time is now. Experiment.
That's right, folks. You just heard Joe Simon say, I was right.
It happens. It happens. I don't mind saying you're right.
Every now and then. But, you know, in true host fashion, you're giving me the great segue here. Andre Bobrick says, or asks, what do you think the chances are the Blazers do anything in the playoffs with a healthy Dame, Nurk, and Collins? I will caveat this and say that we got our first real news on Collins the other day from Damian Lillard when he was asked if those guys were coming back, and he responded, most definitely, and he talked about Nurk. Obviously, Nurk's ready. Nurk has been ready to go since, like, February, guys, just so we're clear. But when you look at Zach, our original timeline, and obviously you and I have talked about this a ton, was supposed to be reevaluated in the beginning of March. Dame said that basically he wasn't ready, and that he was still probably a month out from being ready to go.
And that makes sense. We heard nothing about Zach, which only means one thing. It wasn't going great.
And when you and I talked about this, I got to go see him during pregame warmups, and you could see he was still trying to build some of that strength back. You could see kind of a hitch every now and then when he'd throw a pass where he just didn't want to work 100%. And with a shoulder dislocation or labrum, anything like that, what's the one thing it has to be, Joe? 100%. Absolute 100%. But if anybody's benefiting from 90 to 120 days off, it's probably the guy that was supposed to be due, 60 days ago.
That's the thing, man. There's no reason not to let our imaginations run wild with how the Blazers could be. Mm-hmm. If you look at the rotation, and regardless of who you have starting, Nurk and Zach coming off the bench starting, either way, it doesn't really matter, because if they're starting, then you have Whiteside and Melo coming off the bench. If they're not, then you have Nurk and Zach coming off the bench. You have this really crazy young core. Say you need someone to just light a fire in everyone's ass, and you send Wenyen out there for 3-4 minutes to just dive around.
To do Wenyen things.
Yeah, like a superhero. I mean, you have a lot of fun pieces and potential combinations to put out there that could be very effective. Let's not forget what Gary Trent Jr. did down the stretch for the Portland Trail Blazers. Who knows? Maybe Ant has been building his confidence back up, getting to a point where he could be an incredibly effective role player once again. There's a lot to look toward and say, wow, if things break right for Portland, they could make another run. You know what? I'm going to say, I don't care. They can make another run back to the Western Conference Finals. Why the hell not? Things also, conversely, could go really bad. That could happen too. But I think the variance
is wild.
It's humongous because there's so many unknowns, but I can't imagine a team benefiting more from this time off, considering they were out of the playoffs when the pandemic hit and everything got suspended, to where they potentially could be now with an opportunity to play themselves back in and also much healthier than they were.
They'll have everyone save Rodney, which, I mean, Rodney was a very large piece.
Yeah, the first 20 games, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was shooting 50% from the field and from three. So, I mean, that's pretty decent. And it's kind of funny. Steve DeWalt and I last week talked about who could really benefit from the return to basketball in this time off. How about Anthony Simons playing in his backyard?
Yeah.
He's in Orlando. That's where he's from. Like, if they're playing at the Wide World of Disney, pretty easy to go home at night, and I mean, depending on what the levels of quarantine are. But
look, speaking as a Simons, when you have Mama Simons cooking for you, it's a big advantage in your life. I understand this. Anthony understands this.
Yes.
So literal home cooking.
So again, you're just teeing these up for me when you talked about who's starting. Andre had a follow-up question with, who do you think starts between Nurk and Whiteside, Collins and Melo?
I mean, we have the same answer here, don't we?
I mean, there's the Nurkic question, which I would take a very large sum of money and put that on Jusuf Nurkic starting. Yes.
Really?
Yes.
See, I was gonna have the opposite.
Really?
I think it's gonna be Whiteside and Melo.
Okay, the Melo one, I tend to agree, because I don't think 16-year NBA veteran Carmelo Anthony is seeding way for Zach Collins.
No,
and that's not a shot at Zach. It's the fact that Melo was in the league, when Zach was born, basically.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like that veteran card, and he came in off the couch and he played well. So
no, Dan, you misspoke. Melo wasn't on the couch. He said that many times. How dare you make that accusation?
He came off the couch. And let's be honest, he may be the best off-the-couch player in NBA history.
Yeah.
To come in and start and play 37 minutes a night, like, that's just bonkers.
Yeah.
But you think Hassan starts?
I do, even though we've had this period where everything has sort of stopped. I still think that you cannot have Hassan Whiteside come off the bench this season because you're still in the confines of this season. I think you have a better possibility of having Nurk be Nurk off the bench than you do having Hassan be Hassan off the bench. Hassan is going to view that as a demotion. There is no way that he can look at that and say, well, I'm still the guy around here. Even if everyone knows he's not the guy, Hassan has to think he is the guy for him to play at a certain level. And I think Nurk has the ability to swallow the pride and the ego and sit on the bench. Danny is in violent agreement. Please go ahead.
I'm gonna have to. Nurk has been in this situation before. It didn't go well.
Yeah, but he didn't have Dame before.
That does matter, certainly. But my suspicion is that Nurk does need to be not coddled. Coddle isn't the right word. Reinforced, given that vote of confidence that, yes, you are our guy. And I think the way to do that is to be, hey, Nurk, you get to start, but until you show your minute ready, as far as like playing more than 20 a night, Hassan gets the closing minutes. And I think that's the way you go about it. I think that serves both in that Nurk is the guy who gets the, not necessarily token start, but kind of the award, it kind of goes along with that of like, hey, you can't lose your starting spot to injury. Here you go, you're back. Where to keep Hassan happy and to keep him, like you said, motivated to be the guy, he's the guy in the closing lineup, barring foul trouble or, those couple games where he wasn't out there.
So do you think things would have been different if we didn't have this, I don't know, it's going to be what, 4 months, four months in between games? Because Nurk was going to come back, obviously, the Sunday before they canceled everything.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Nurk would have started on March 15th is my question?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. I remember what my whole thought process was. You put him in the same mode that he was in before he went down, which is you let him warm up, you get him going, and then you get him into the game for 6-7 minutes, and then you let him sit on the bench. And you use the second half, you let him warm up, you get him going, you let him play 6-7 minutes, and that's how you get to your 15 or so minutes. But you put him in the same pattern, you put him in the same familiar spot of taking that jump ball to start the game and working in that pick and roll with Damian Lillard. And I think that those were the most important keys. And I think that was the kind of thing that kind of spreads throughout the team, right? Because when Nurk's got that little bit of swagger, I think the whole team feeds off of that. And Hassan would have ultimately got the minutes, but it would have been more about getting Nurk more back into being Jusuf Nurkic.
Yeah, I mean, the dynamic between Nurk and Whiteside is not something I know a ton about, but it feels like it's probably more competitive than it is congenial.
Yeah, ambivalence would be the word I would use.
Really?
Just more
we're both Portland Trailblazers, but we're not friends, we're not enemies, we're just on the same team.
Yeah, I would put it in that realm because, I mean, they're trying to take food off each other's plate, to put it in a very simple term.
Well, one thing I would like about Nurk starting is all of the Whiteside is better than Nurk stuff that I was seeing sort of on Twitter that just enraged both of us because it's insane.
Yeah.
How quickly we forget what Nurk did. I mean, the game Nurk went down, his line was
bonkers.
Incredible. Like, yeah. Nurk was in this stretch where he was like, I mean, I know I like to hype Nurk up, but he was legitimately in the conversation for third team All-NBA. Like, he was playing at that level.
He was 17, 12, and 3.
Yes.
17, 12, 4, and 3. He was averaging almost 4 assists and 3 blocks.
For us to suggest that Hassan Whiteside was better than Jusuf Nurkic at any point is crazy. I think Hassan Whiteside serves a purpose, and I guess I'll just close what I have to say on this by just saying I'm worried about how Hassan is going to handle Nurk being the man.
No matter what. And that's the thing is, what if Hassan does start, but Nurk is all of a sudden getting closing minutes? But it's still the same situation of, so that's why I think that ultimately the way that you deal with it is you control what you can control, which is starting Jusuf Nurkic, and then there are more. I think it's easier to control somebody's minutes as a starter.
Yeah.
So
no, I think that's good. Well, I can't wait to find. We're actually going to find out, which is the best.
Soon.
Part. Yes.
Less than 60 days now. So, all right. This is one you and I were talking. We were talking about before the show. Actually, this one got in. I didn't see it when it came in from the Under Armour Gamer. Can you please tell me why Shain Brenden did not come back? He was a fun guy.
Oh, Shain, he is such a fun guy, isn't he? I love Shain.
Unabashedly, that is our guy.
Yes. So, okay. There was like a weird assumption through people that, like on Blazer Twitter,
Yeah,
that, like there was some sort of falling out between the three of us.
which is
Now,
ridiculous.
which is crazy. I don't want to speak specifically to like Shain left for A, B, and C.
No.
I mean, Shain made a decision. He's no longer on the show. It had nothing to do with our relationship, the three of us.
In any way, shape, matter, or form. We text, call, Zoom, have beers together.
Shain may dispute this, but I'm not going to let him because he's a dear friend. He's a dear friend to the both of us.
Whether he wants to admit it or not.
Yeah, and I guess I'm glad this was brought up just because I just want to say that there is no animosity between the three of us. The reason Shain left the show had nothing to do with our dynamic. We love Shain.
Mm-hmm.
Loved him being on the show. He's a dear friend. We had
There's
a lot
many
of fun.
times where we're like, God, I wish we had Shain right now.
Yes, there are so many things that happen where we're like, oh, I wish Shain was sitting. This is a perfect Shain moment.
This is just softball for him. Just here you go. Go ahead and tee this one up and have fun with it. So
and the reason I wanted to talk about this is because there are so many shows out there where the hosts despise each other.
Radio and TV.
Yes.
Yes.
I'll speak from a personal experience. I was the afternoon news anchor at KXL Radio for 2.5 years, and the highest ratings I ever got was with a woman who it got so bad between us off the air, we literally did not talk to each other off the air for 4 days. There was no talk. Nothing was said. It was silent when a story was playing over the air. It was a miserable experience. It was a terrible 4 months. I came home and would just stare ahead blankly thinking, how did my life get to this point? But the ratings were great. And people, the worst part about it, Dan, people told us how good we sounded on the air together. And every time they said that, it was like sticking a knife.
Just twisting it a little bit further into the spine.
Back. Yeah. Exactly. And that's not to say that the show hasn't been successful. Outsiders, we've been fortunate enough where the ratings
somehow they
good.
Keep coming up and keep coming back, baby.
Exactly right. But so my point with all of that is to say there are times, a lot of times, when hosts don't like each other, they don't get along. This is one of the rare situations where me, Dan, and Shain actually genuinely enjoy each other's company.
We spent 5-6 hours a night together.
Yeah, when we were doing the pre and post game show, that was a long, especially when you're in like three games in 4 days. That's a lot of time to spend.
More time with each other than with our significant others.
Exactly right. So I miss Shain. I miss him being around. I miss him taking way too long to order Postmates. You've never seen someone more indecisive about ordering delivery food. He'd ask me what I'm getting, Dan what he's getting, and then we'd be in the third quarter, and he would just be there like up in
throw his hands up like, well, I guess I'm not eating tonight.
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing, Shain? But I love Shain to death.
Yes.
He'll never hear this, but I still love him.
Oh, no, we're going to tag him. I'm going to tag him in it now.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
All right.
Oh, jeez. But yeah, we did. I've had people and you've had people ask us this.
Yeah.
Since the announcement was made for this season, and you never really quite knew if it was appropriate or what to say or how to say it. But
I mean, it's Shain's story to say. If
yes,
he
exactly.
To give details, that's fine. It's just.
But it wasn't like we had a falling out in any way, shape, matter, or form.
Yeah, there wasn't like a night that ended at 1 a.m. at the Rialto with us taking a swing at each other. Like, I'm sure that's probably what people thought, but.
Yeah, no, that and maybe like a throwing of a chocolate cake, but I don't know.
That was a Yule log, Dan. Don't you remember? Best moment in the show's history.
It was, and one of these days they'll do a behind the scenes and we'll get the full release of the Yule log.
The True Hollywood Story, Christmas 2018.
All right, man. I'm gonna end. We'll end on this so you can get out of here. Overall takeaway from what you think they should do, what they will do, and how the Blazers will come out of this.
Yeah, I think what they will do is something more conservative than we'd probably like. I think it's going to be like, 74, 76, 78 games, something like that. I bet they bring back like 24-ish teams. They'll make a determination of this is how many games back that it's feasible for a team to actually make up over X amount of games, and they'll bring those teams back. They'll play some version of regular season games. It'll be a little more blah than we want it to be. If that is the case, it obviously doesn't bode well for the Blazers because they're 3.5 games back of Memphis. So if they take that, it's going to be tough to make up that ground unless Portland does have the opportunity to play Memphis twice, which is what was on the schedule.
Yeah.
But, considering
what games do they take?
Exactly. There's a lot of calculus involved with that scenario, but my gut just tells me that's what they're going to end up doing, which sucks for Portland because ultimately I think if they go to any sort of regular season format, even if they give them 8 to 10 games, 3.5 games, as me and Danny have talked ad nauseum about half games, that's a lot to make up. It's a lot to make up in a short span. And even if Portland went like 8-2 or 9-1 over that stretch, it still might not be enough.
Yeah. So what is it? They had 16 games remaining, I think is what it was. 3.5 is doable. Like that's not impossible. You get down to like 14, 12, 10, you're like, it gets a little bit more difficult. Anything under 10, you need so much help because not only do you have to make up 4. Like you have to go to win this out. You've got to go 10-0. They go 6-4.
Yeah, and especially if you don't get the opportunity to play the team that is directly ahead of you twice, then it becomes a big uphill climb.
Yeah, and then you're fighting, and hoping and praying. And that's where kind of ties us back to Damian Lillard saying, "I want a real shot," because he did have 16. Him and the Trailblazers did have 16 games remaining. That is a real shot. And everybody talks about don't drop games to crappy teams. Yeah, that's a valid point. But you also aren't figuring in for a pandemic, and you think you have your 16 games remaining. So, all right, man. Go ahead and plug the podcast and get out of here and go get your golf going.
Yeah, look, if you're listening for fun golf talk during these times,
is fun golf talk.
Please check out At the Turn. It's available on all major podcast platforms. Enjoy it. It's fun. We have a silly time talking about golf. Danny, thank you for having me on.
Thank you, buddy.
Great to be your co-host once again, even if it's just over a Zoom call. I do want to add, just on a serious note, just to reiterate what we talked about at the jump.
Yep.
Thanks for listening to this. This was a nice diversion just to talk with a friend like Dan about sports for a while. The news has obviously been consuming, as it should be. And I just support what's happening out there. Black Lives Matter. Just be kind to each other. End police brutality. Thanks for listening. Hope to see you soon on the Boob Tube.
Well said, buddy. Go ahead and let them know where they can find you on social media.
At Joe Simons Says. It's not Joe Simmons Says. It's Joe Simons Says. You know how to spell Simons. That's how you spell Anthony's last name.
There you go. Thanks, man, for joining us. You can find me on social media at Danny Marang, at DANNYMARANG, up and down for all the social media platforms. And when basketball returns, and I believe we're still contractually obligated, Joe and I will have you every post game for NBC Sports Northwest on Blazers Outsiders for the remainder of the 2019-2020 NBA season. Thank you, guys. I'm going to be better about this. Please like, rate, subscribe, do all that stuff. That does actually matter. The stuff that we get out of doing this comes from that. So please do go do that. Joe, thanks for joining us, man. For everybody listening, thank you, guys. Stay safe out there. Support each other. Love each other. And we'll catch you next week. Bye.